short video, there are at least three important lessons one can take away from the video, right? So what I need to do is just change the name from Usain Bolt to company secretaries, right? So like yourself. So when you start the journey, like the young boy talking to himself, not going to be late, not going to be late, not going to be late. That's kind of the self-hypnosis method which you would want to follow to ensure you're going to be on time every time and you're going to achieve your personal success in style. Okay, that's the starting point. But it doesn't stop there. If you look at the coach, he was talking to him and saying, you are good. To be great, you need to take it a little bit more seriously. That's what is required when you sign up for any professional program. You're already good. You have achieved a very good level of professional success already in your school days and college days. Therefore, it is question of how do you get great into your future. Therefore, you need to take it a little bit more seriously and start to align your sails. Therefore, you are able to adjust and move along with the wind. The third important lesson I would want you to consider and be conscious of is about what the mother's suggestion to the boy, right? So you don't have to be very serious. You don't have to be nervous and anxious. Therefore, you don't know which foot is wearing which shoes, right? So you just enjoy the journey, be yourself, appreciate what's happening around you, and play the game. You will be the winner. That's the technique to fly. That's the fourth lesson, right? So you're going to be there in the leadership space. Have complete confidence in you. Just reach out to the clouds. You are going to be there in clouds like Usain Bolt. So that's the short four important areas which I wanted to remind you, as much as there are multiple other lessons which we can learn from in future. But at this stage, when you are signing up for a professional program, just think about these four important aspects. One being telling yourself, talking to yourself, the self-talk part of it. Therefore, you are able to become a well-rounded professional. The second being good to great journey. How are you going to build your skills, leadership skills, to become a great leader? Therefore, don't be comfortable with being good, aspire to be great. And then don't worry about things too much, right? So just take it easy. It's like sport, it's like game. Just enjoy it, be with it, and you will get there. And the fourth one is, when you do all of this, you will see yourself in the leadership clouds. You will definitely reach there. Like the boy who was able to fly, you will be able to fly as well. Okay. So now, what are the opportunities in front of you when you complete in no time, less than 2 years time? Many of you are going to enroll yourself for the final membership program, which will be another captive audience kind of program where you will get further leadership techniques, etc. But what are the opportunities? Is it going to be just India? I'm not sure, because a lot of people who worked with me, I will talk about a company where I hired a lot of company secretaries, chartered accountants, and cost accountants in my team. At least 30 of them who worked with me are in different parts of the planet now. Some are in Americas, even in China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, now in Middle East as well. So there are a lot of guys who have gone into different countries in different leadership programs. Therefore, my thinking is, the world is going to be an oyster. You're going to be there in multiple different countries, multiple different functions as well. So we'll talk about each one of that in a short way. Okay. Right. So when you fly into the future, the business titles, now, like I said, business titles are incidental. It could be anything, but the way it is going to evolve, first one is going to be the CGO. Okay, so CGO means Chief Governance Officer. So the example which I am going to give you, or going to give you confidence and comfort that this is a possibility. Okay, so I think even today, people who are in employment are called company secretaries, key managerial personnel from the accountability point of view. But when it comes to business title, it's going to be almost like the senior leadership position, which could be called as Chief Governance Officer. We'll talk about that. And then the second one is Chief Risk Officer, another big function which is evolving globally, particularly if you see the financial services industry. These are all high-paid jobs, and some of these jobs are, if you convert that into INR, is running into at least per annum a few crores. Okay, I can give you examples of people who are already in that salary bracket in different countries. Okay, so chief risk officer is another possibility. And then the compliance officer and company secretary, right? So the C2 is company secretary as well as compliance officer. So this is in my view, it's a double hatting role which you can consider, because many companies wouldn't want to appoint separate compliance officer. But even if you have compliance officer, from governance point of view, that role rolls up to a company secretary. So this is another big opportunity. These are, I'm not talking about ordinary startup jobs. I'm talking about after a period of experience. These are the roles which are going to be equal roles, and some of these positions you're expected to coach and mentor directors also. Therefore, these are very different roles from what it is today or what was it before. And then practicing company secretary. Already our institute secretary talked about some of the opportunities when it comes to insolvency professionals, when it comes to national company law tribunal, etc. So we will identify some of those options as well. And then, like I mentioned, the independent director positions, right? So the Institute of Chartered Secretaries in UK, after the membership, is already moving the members into independent directors who are independent directors in various companies in UK. So similar to that, I know the our institute is also doing a wonderful job to develop talent for independent directorships also. Then the final one is function. If any of you can expand it as you like it, like Shakespeare, and tell me what would be the abbreviation, just out of curiosity. I'll give you a few seconds. What would be CLS expansion? Just trying to test you and tease you a little bit. And this is a title, right? So it can be anything. Just give me any title which will be a fancy title for you in future. Let's see whether you're corporate legal solution provider. That is more or less the chief governance officer role, isn't it? Corporate legal service, Priyanka. Uh, chief legal, okay, corporate. Everybody is wearing the legal hat only, yeah, chief legal services, leader. Yeah, of course, all these are leadership roles. Company legal secretary, yeah, company secretary, you can rename it in whichever way you want. Right, company law specialist. Okay, okay. So the another important domain which is growing disproportionately today in the last few years, if you look back, the space which is growing disproportionately is the cyberspace. Okay, so there are multiple legislations which have come up. This is a cyber legal specialist. Okay, so the cyber law specialist is what I meant. So it's just a dream state. Therefore, all your answers could be right. But what I thought was a cyber law specialist. So that's again going to be like the chief risk officer role. The cyber law specialist is going to be a very high rewarding fancy position across the globe, because a lot of legislations across the planet is going to be same, because the technology we use across the planet is very similar. Therefore, these are roles which are going to happen in the entire planet, not necessarily within India. Okay, so we'll go into each one of that. Right. The chief governance officer. Why am I not calling it as a company secretary role? Why am I calling it as a chief governance officer? The evidence I can pick up is initially, if you look at HR function, which was my home ground for almost last 20 years. Initially, it was like any other support function where people were called as industrial law specialist or factories HR personnel or the personal manager. These were the titles in the HR function. If you see current titles given to the head of HR department, it's called chief people officer. They're not calling it head of HR. It's called as chief people officer. Now, the role which bulk of company secretaries playing today are governance role. It is not just about secretarial function where you're filing returns and taking care of compliance. It's about end-to-end governance. Therefore, in a short period of time, I will not be surprised if multinational companies start to call these individuals as chief governance officer, right? So the chief governance officer is looking at the entire company end to end, including financial legislations, including the the cyber law specialist is going to be a very high rewarding fancy position across the globe, because a lot of legislations across the planet is going to be same, because the technology we use across the planet is very similar. Therefore, these are roles which are going to happen in the entire planet, not necessarily within India. Okay, so we'll go into each one of that. Right. The chief governance officer. Why am I not calling it as a company secretary role? Why am I calling it as a chief governance officer? The evidence I can pick up is, initially, if you look at HR function, which was my home ground for almost last 20 years. Initially, it was like any other support function where people were called as industrial law specialist, or factories HR personnel, or the personal manager. These were the titles in the HR function. If you see current titles given to the head of HR department, it's called Chief People Officer. They're not calling as head of HR. It's called as Chief People Officer. Now, the role which bulk of company secretaries playing today are governance role. It is not just about secretarial function where you're filing returns and taking care of compliance. It's about end-to-end governance. Therefore, in a short period of time, I will not be surprised if multinational companies start to call these individuals as chief governance officer, right? So the chief governance officer is looking at the entire company end to end, including financial legislations, including the labor legislations, including company law, securities law, FEMA, everything, right? Therefore, the governance role is becoming a very important function. And if you ask, many CEOs, when they travel in different parts of the planet, they conduct the workshops or open houses. When they open the floor for questions, many people ask them questions like, what is exciting to you? For example, if Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella is coming to India, and if you happen to meet them, people interact with them and ask them questions, right? When people ask them questions, one of the important questions most of the CEOs receive is like, what makes you sleepless in the night? Most of the companies, they will ask them, because a CEO should be a guy who is flying to different parts of the planet, running the company for the shareholders at the entire planet, right? So what will make them sleepless? Because they have to choose what are the accountable areas, and how are they going to function as the successful CEOs. And invariably, all of them said, compliance. Non-compliance makes me sleepless. In any part of the world, if the company is non-compliant, CEO is going to face the consequences. Therefore, CEOs have greater trouble, directors have greater trouble if this company in any part of the world is non-compliant. It's the role of the governance officer, the chief governance officer, to give the service guarantee to the top leaders, the directors and the CEOs, that we are absolutely compliant in all parts of the planet. Therefore,